Yeah.
We may now resume our meeting. Dr. Cheng Chung Tai is not here. Do we have other members who would like to ask questions? Let me ask again whether there are other members yet who have to ask questions. Ms. Eddie G. 5 minutes for your first round. Sorry, I'm still, looking up the paper. I have a question for the Bureau. This year, when we discuss this PWSC item, I asked a question. That is the planning for the, the facility in Tung Chung, and the Bureau said that the MTRC, in respect of the Tung Chung West Extension and the Tung Chung West Station, they submitted a proposal. At the time, we were told that the MTRC has yet to submit a proposal, and therefore the government was not able to give us further information. 5 months have lapsed already. It's now October. I'd like to ask whether the MTRC has already submitted its proposal. We are very concerned about one point. The Tung Chung East Station will be in at the center of the, Tung Chung extension. And I have been discussing with colleagues, and we have been very concerned whether or not the Tung Chung East Station will repeat what happened to Tung Chung Station. That is, once you get out of the station, the space is outside is, managed privately, and there will be a lot of restrictions on any activities that can be held there. So I'd like to first of all ask what proposals have been submitted by the MTRC, and secondly, when the MTRC submits its proposal, and when you respond or reply to the MTRC, you should include a condition. That is, when they build the Tung Chung, when they design the Tung Chung railway station, and I'm sure the area will be much larger than just the station itself. Other than the Town Planning Board, I hope there will be an opportunity for them to discuss with the Tung Chung residents to how the Tung Chung station should be designed, and or to ensure that there is accessibility. Could the Bureau answer those questions and give us the undertaking? Deputy Secretary. Thank you, Mr. Ji, for the question. The MTRC has yet to submit its proposal regarding the proposal for Tung Chung East and Tung Chung West Station. We expect that they may still need some more time. We may have to wait until early next year before they will submit its proposal to the government. I understand Mr. Chi's concern, especially for both railway stations, especially the space outside the MTR station. Well, how would the station be designed, and what will be the alignment? I don't think Mr. G need to be worried. Whenever we receive a detailed proposal from the MTRC, we'll certainly consult the LegCo. When you sign the agreement in respect of the design, I don't think you should. I think at the time they're contemplating the design, the residents should be involved at that stage already. The planning department has already done a very good job, but when it comes to the station itself, I hope you will also include this process, so that right from the beginning you would conduct the consultation, allow the public to participate, rather than deciding on the proposal and the option yet first. Otherwise, priority will be given to commercial considerations. So can we make a start, make it a precedent in Tung Chung? Thank you. I've heard Mr. Ju's point. I'll certainly relate that to the Transport Housing Bureau. It is your suggestion that before everything is decided, the public and LegCo should be given the opportunity to submit the inputs. I will certainly relay your suggestion to the THB. It's not just for the submission of views. I hope that they can allow the public to participate in the design of the open space outside the train station, so that we can really have a really inclusive public space, rather than a place where the security staff will not allow people to go there. Well, I've heard Mr. Ju's suggestion. I would also like to clarify for the large piece of turf outside Tung Chung Tong Station. In the outline zoning plan, according to the outline zoning plan, whatever the mode of development, eventually that area, the management of that area will be undertaken by the government. So if the government were to manage the site, I'm sure we can guarantee the public will be able to enjoy the space. Mr. Ho Chin Yuen, thank you. Those in the fishery and agriculture industry are against any form of unnecessary reclamation. But we understand that there is a keen demand for land to develop housing. But the government, I believe, should send out a positive message and strike a right balance. For the present project, you are proposing a marina which can allow about 90 yachts to be moored there. So I'd like to ask whether not only yachts can use the facility there. The government told us, I think the government has understood the point that we made. We only want the moors as a premise. What we are saying is that even for the marina, even you allow us to go there, there will not be any fishing ground there. So we won't go there. So I'd like to take this opportunity and ask the government to give us an undertaking, especially for the Development Bureau. For any other reclamation projects, and even when you have any rezoning, you should consider providing, space for the development, future development of the fishing and agriculture industry. Otherwise, there will be, more and more objections. Secondly, when there is reclamation, the government has a system to pay out ex gratia compensation. Of course, I don't want the government to only resort to making payment to resolve any problems. But in your paper, you have not told us how much the ex gratia payment will be. In the case of the Hong Kong-Macau Chuai Bridge and the artificial island, when the project's almost finished, the fishermen have yet to receive the ex gratia payment. We don't want such payment. It would be best if there is no reclamation. But the public's perception is that the government is actually reneging on its original promise. So please consider reviewing this system of paying ex gratia payment, so that the fishermen would know that the government is, honoring its undertakings. And thank you, Mr. Ho, for the question. I think Mr. Ho raised 3 points. That is the payment of an ex gratia compensation to the fishermen. Perhaps the director could further elaborate on this point. To answer your other 2 questions, I understand that the fishermen normally have their views regarding reclamation. And it's not just fishermen. We want the reclamation to be conducted on condition that there is minimal impact on the environment. For this project, we've carried out an EIA study and it's been approved. But we still need to come up with mitigating measures. We certainly will follow up on all these measures when the project proceeds. And secondly, Mr. Ho said that in future, whenever there are any proposals regarding land use, the government should, cater to the needs of the fishermen and the farmers. I've heard that, yeah. what I hope the government will understand that with the change of time, you may need to rezone certain land. I've never said that there shouldn't be any, clearance or demolition, but the government should come up with an appropriate, proposal for the farmers to survive. So there are 4,000 hectares of land, and our sector does not want all of them to be used for farming. But then the arable farm is too scattered. Every time there is any development project, there will be dozens of farmers who would object, say they've been farming there for a long time. That is because when you do your planning, you've not planned well in advance how you can help these farmers. Would you need a response? Deputy Secretary, thank you. I think Mr. Ho referred to the northeastern part of the new territories. Basically, he was referring to the two new development areas in Kutong North. We are now closely monitoring the situation of the farmers in the two affected areas. We already have some measures to allow these farmers to, if they are really bona fide farmers, we allow them to continue with farming in some alternative locations. Perhaps I can provide such information to Mr. Ho after the meeting. Mr. Uchiwai. I have a question regarding cement mixing. It's going to cost $3.1 billion. On previous occasions, when we talk about deep cement mixing, normally it is only in respect of areas with silt, so that the silt will not dissipate or spread out to the other areas. Now, in the reclamation area, was it previously a pit for the dumping of silt? And are you going to adopt the deep cement mixing method? I understand that this is the most expensive method when it comes to reclamation. So in this seabed, I'd like to ask why we have to adopt the deep cement mixing method for the entire seabed. Mr. Lam. Thank you, Mr. Wu, for the question. First of all, let me clarify that the DCM, or deep cement mixing method, will not be applied to the entire seabed. We will adopt the DCM method only in respect of the area where underneath the seawall where we need to improve the foundation. For areas outside of the seawall, we will not use the DCM method. We will only lay sand on the seabed, and then we will, discharge the water so that sedimentation can take place earlier. In Tung Chung East, we are proposing to use the DCM method because we've conducted some, site investigation, and we found out that the silt underneath the seawall is rather weak. And after considering several options, either we use, piles made of gravels. This is the method we use for the Hong Kong-Macau Dry Bridge. We found out that using such piles would not be strong enough given the weak marine mud underneath the seawall. So we therefore believe that by using the DCM method, by mixing cement with the silt, and after a chemical process, they will, attain a certain, strength which can actually withstand the seawall. And we think this is the more appropriate method. Well, in that case, you're not using the DCM method for the foundation of the entire sea reclamation area, and it's only in respect of the seawall. So you need to use the DCM method for the how much percent of that will take up the entire work area. And on this work site, using the DCM method, how much is the unit cost if you use the DCM method? For the Tung Chung East reclamation, the length of the seawall is about 5 kilometers. In enclosure 2, we have provided the cross-section diagrams for the sea wall. Now, I may not have with me the width of the DCM, but I have some information with me. That is, the total size where the DCM method would be applied is roughly 2 million odd square meters. For using the DCM method, you need to consider the width, the length, and the depth. So we were basing our estimate by, we're talking about roughly 2.3 million cubic meters. Can you give us a simple comparison? That is, compared with the airport island and other projects which are also using the DCM method. Could you compare the unit cost of those other projects? Basically, they are comparable. They reclaim 650 hectares. We are reclaiming about 130. But the length of the seawall is different. For the third runway, it's more regular in shape, it's rectangular. So the length of the seawall and its area is relatively smaller, whereas for the size of the reclamation and the length of our seawall, the proportion is larger. Or could you give me the unit cost? We can certainly provide you with the information afterwards. Do you have the figure with you? No? Next, Mr. A. Chan. Thank you. When we approve funding for these projects, whether it's the government and the pro-government camp, they always think that if we are late with approving these projects, the cost estimate will go up and then more public funds will need to be spent. But if I study this paper, in May 2017, in the paper for the PWSC, Tung Chung East reclamation is 205 million, 20.5 million, but for Tung Chung East now is smaller. So in other words, even if we are late in approving this project, the cost estimate has come down. Looking at the variations in paragraph 15A to J, they have actually gone up by about 600 million, but the contingency is down by 900 million, overall provision down by 300 million. So the government explain why we have this variation. And for the price adjustment factor, has it come down, or is it because you estimate that the escalation in cost will slow down? But if that's the case, perhaps the cost may come down further yet if we were to, wait longer. Thank you. I'll start and then I'll ask the director to supplement. Mr. Chen already noted what are the major source of variations. That is item K, contingent provision for price adjustments. In paragraph 17, in the third column, when we talk about price adjustment, indeed there has been a downward adjustment. But but I must point out that the price adjustment could go up or down. The latest estimate is that it's going downwards, but we cannot guarantee that it will not go up again going forward. But before I defer to the director, I'd like to say that even though the present adjustment has resulted in a downward adjustment in the cost. So does it mean that if we approve the project, delay the approval of the project, there would not be any impact? I must stress that we cannot afford to delay this any further. The Tung Chung Reclamation Project is very important, because it will affect the housing supply. For the next 30 years, we need to build 1 million residential units. Our most optimistic estimate is that we can only build about 600,000. And the Tung Chung Estimate Project can allow us to build for the whole Tung Chung East and West. We're talking about building close to 50,000 units, which is quite a substantial proportion compared with the total of 600,000. So I'd like to follow up on this point. I'd like to give you the chance to clarify. You're now applying for an estimate. So even if we approve this in July, and if the projects were delayed, it would still be the same amount. So you're now asking us to, well, if we sign this check in July, it would be a lot more, but and the contingency is just there, for contingency, right? I think Mr. Chen's observation is correct. In paragraph 15, we have, I think the paper we gave members before the summer recess, the price was based on what was prevailing in September 2016. In paragraph 15A to J, they are the price estimates made a year later. So all the numbers have gone up because of inflation. And for item K,
the price adjustment, because the government has a minor adjustment of the price trends, and it's ready for a downward price adjustment. Therefore, so compared to last year's paper, the funding prepared is several hundreds of $1 million less. Before the summer, the estimate was higher. So we now go for an estimate of $20,210 million. And we are inviting tenders now for the construction. As for the final price of the construction, it will be dependent on the outcome of the tendering. Next one, Matt McCune. Chairman, I've got several engineering-related questions on this item. If you have been following the Tung Chung Town Extension, you may recall that initially the plan was to reclaim land in Tung Chung East and West. Ultimately, because of stakeholders' views, including our view that Tung Chung West should not be reclaimed, therefore now it's only going for Tung Chung East for reclamation. And that underlies the current funding proposal. I hope the government can continue to adopt this attitude of accepting public opinions. Particularly in relation to my questions. First, about the shore, the water sports along the shore. Do we have to have a marina? Indeed, there are sports associations who've told us that they want to have dragon boat races and so forth. So can the site be turned into a center for water sports? And also for rail link, we've said that we don't want to see that the infrastructure being completed years after people have moved in. Because if you don't have the rail development, then people living there will have to be all traveling via buses. But that would not be enough to handle the large number of people. And secondly, in the paper, you said that initially the construction was expected to be completed by the end of 2023, because we should have dealt with this proposal in July, but for all sorts of reasons, so the public know we couldn't do that. And now we're having this meeting now in October. So would that affect the timetable, the objective of moving in people there in 2023? And secondly, can you clarify a bit on what was asked earlier by our colleague about the adjustments in prices? So if we, back in July, we were able to approve the funding for you, then now with the latest information, so ultimately, even if we were to approve the $20.5 billion for you, then even if we had approved it back in July, would it even now, the expenditure would not be higher, right? It's not because of a lapse of 3 months, money can be saved, right? Yes. Thank you, Ms. Mack, for your questions. Yes, firstly, on your first point, in the reclamation work, we're only aiming to do it at Tung Chung East, because in public engagement exercises earlier, we found that, including LegCo members, we found that people don't like reclamation in Tung Chung West. Therefore, we have given up on that idea because we want to ensure there's conservation there. And secondly, on the zone initially earmarked for marina, some members have just spoken and expressing the concern about where the place should be used as a marina or moorings, whether it should be turned into a water sports center instead. I heard your view. I know that there's strong preference for the latter, so we would actually try to open up that site anyhow for Tung Chung residents. So in the future, the site could be turned into a water sports center and not a marina instead. A facility to be enjoyed by the masses. And also, when we discuss the reclamation in Tung Chung East, there's another area of concern. That is for the first population batch of residents to move in 2023, whereas the Tung Chung East station won't be ready till 2016. There could be a time lag. We know, but we will try to shorten that lag so that it will be more convenient for people living there. We will negotiate with MTRC and we'll try to get the MTRC to expedite their rail development work. As for your fourth question, that is if the latest proposal is approved by LegCo, as the director just said, we have invited tenders already, so very quickly we can finish the tender vetting exercise, and we hope that within this year we can actually let out the contracts and get the advance works to be done by the winning contractor. We hope that by 2023, the first batch of residents can move in there, and the entire project would be finished by 2030. As for the money question, yeah, Ms. Mack's understanding is correct. It all depends who wins the tender and the contractor, what kind of quotation the contractor will ask for. It will just pay them based on what they've asked for. That means the cost could go up or down. So sometimes if there's delay, of course, costs go up, but it's not necessarily the case that if there's delay, then costs might come down. Next one, Yu Si Wing. Thank you, Chairman. Just heard from the DS, her response to questions on reclamation. There was a suggestion for building a marina there, but you said that you could consider it for other purposes. But you had not, or you haven't given up on the idea of a marina yet. I have no problem with that, but Hong Kong, you can see that in Macau and Nansha, both cities are also developing marinas as a kind of, in Nansha, they're treating the development of marinas as a kind of industry. So if we don't do it, then, if we don't build it, then we could undermine the development of the yacht or pleasure boats industry in Hong Kong. Of course, the government needs to strike a balance between accommodating yachts and the needs of the public. So you need to do an assessment to see if we are not building a marina, then would that affect our competitiveness in the region? Would we lose our edge over the other cities? So if we're not going to build a marina, then, as the DS just said, we hope that the site can still be used for mooring purpose. There are not enough moorings for yachts in Hong Kong. So not just for yachts, but maybe for boats, other kinds of boats, and so forth. Don't just turn it into a shelter, typhoon shelter, and ignoring the need for more moorings for yachts. Yachts are not necessarily just for pleasure activities, but as you all know, many people now go sailing in their free time, or they go on cruises and swim, and in nearby areas as well. So people do rent yachts, and these activities are not necessarily for the rich only. They are indeed one of the pleasure activity for the public. So I hope you can consider making good use of the site. If you use the site as a marina, then the investment and the income, have you done any assessment on that? You will have to install basic facilities there, and you may need to allocate specified funding to set up the marina there. And what about the income? Have you carried out any assessment of the potential income in the future? Thank you, Mr. Yu. I think Mr. Yu is right. Even though we always mention yachts, but indeed there are different kinds of yachts, like sailing, those used for sailing. Indeed, in Hong Kong, there are a number of people who actually do sailing as a sport. And so in the Tung Chung East, we can provide the facility for that sort of leisure activities. So we are doing a study now to see in the area what sorts of activities will be best suited for it and how we can best meet the public demand. And Mr. Yu just reminded us that there could be business opportunities in running a marina to provide moorings for yachts. So also, we also think that if we are not to provide a marina there, we may need to consider finding an alternative location to build a marina. So if we decide to change the land use in the end, we are still aware of the need for a marina elsewhere, if not there. Okay, how about the financial aspect? In terms of expenditure, if you were to have a marina, would you have to incur heavy expenditure and without that much income in return? I think we need to look at it more in depth later on in the midst of our study. I can't give you a concrete answer now yet. Okay? So next one, Michael Tam. Thank you, Chairman. The Tung Chung New Town is positioning was supposed to be a livable city. To be a livable city, the basic definition would be one that would allow people to work nearby, the residents to work nearby. In the future, we have of course, the LegCo Airport and the North Business Metropolis. I think altogether they can provide up to 300,000 jobs. And now the new town, together with the existing population, there will be actually a large number of residents. In the end, we may be able to create a new town in the history of Hong Kong where most people will be able to work nearby. If that's the case, then you will have to provide for adequate road transportation. In Tung Chung now, it's very congested, heavy traffic congestion. You need to wait for 45 minutes always to get on the bus because all the bus routes in Tung Chung are so congested, and some people have to take the Tongchong line to go to Qingyi to change the airport express to go to work at the airport. I have fought for a long time for the provision of using the airport express, because it only takes you 7-8 minutes to go to the airport on the airport express. So I hope that there can be more of a higher frequency of airport express trains. I've urged the government to study using the less busy time slots at the airport express to let people go to the airport from Tongchong East. That is, there could be a shuttle service using the 8-minute gap to have 1 or 2 rounds of shuttle service to the airport. I know the government is still studying it, so DS, don't worry. I know the director can answer my question. You don't need to. He's very familiar with this issue. But you said that you look at the report and said that the idea is technically feasible. But ultimately, it's the Transport and Housing Bureau's decision, because the Airport Express is managed by that bureau. So will the bureau be willing to take the risk of inserting shuttle service on the Airport Express, because they won't want to take the risk of causing flight delay? But so I feel that they don't want to take the risk. If that's the case, then if you rely on road transportation in the future, that may not be a solution. If you want to let people to work nearby, then you may need to build a dedicated line, above road line, which will cost more than hundreds of millions of dollars. It may cost up to $5 to $6 billion. A light transit system, so that as the population increases, you can make sure that the city is livable. So yes, Director, you can't expect that your project has to be dependent on a extension managed by another bureau. So would you do your own study on whether you can provide a light rail that have 4 or 5 cars to provide shuttle service to people who work in the airport? Director, traffic on Lantau Island is not something that can be decided by 1 or 2 bureaus. It has to be looked at by the entire government. You're talking about using the spare capacity of the Airport Express to provide shuttle service to the airport for people who work there. The Airport Authority previously did hand in a report on this subject to the government. It's too early for us to judge or to say whether the government would accept the idea or not. But we haven't seen the establishment of the Sustainable Lantau Development Office yet. Still, we are in the midst of doing traffic studies for Lantau. And from what we've done so far, we know that the connectivity between Airport Island and Tongchong is of much concern to the public. We did go to the site, and in our traffic study, we will try to identify solutions to make sure that there can be better connectivity between the island and Tongchong. And one of the options could be rail line. Fernando Zheng, next. Thank you, Chairman. First of all, I'd like to confirm one thing. I understand the project itself has already invited tenders. Even before we finished scrutinizing the proposal, the government on this $20.2 billion project, it has already invited tenders. Is that true? That's true, right? Okay. That is, even before we finished our scrutiny, you had already started your work. So whether we vote on it today or not, the tendering procedure has been activated already. So when would you decide on who will be the winning tenderer? When will there be a decision? On June 30th, we invited contractors to submit tenders. On September 22nd, we received the tenders, and we're vetting the tenders now.
I need to say this. Before we get funding approval from the Finance Committee, we will not award the contract to the contractor. So you have received all the tender documents or tender bids because on the 22nd of September, all tender bids have been received, and we're now in October. Legislators represent the public. We give comments to the administration. We hope that after listening to our views, they will fine-tune it. Say, for example, the marina, which is a bit controversial. Mr. Yu Si-wing said it was very important. However, we are very concerned about the needs of grassroots as well. We would like the space to be given to the public, and it will be better for it not to be occupied by a marina. Ms. Ho, the DS has replied to us. I know her because she was the DS of the Commission on Poverty, and I really appreciated her work. I hope that bearing her work in the Commission in mind, she would not let the site be occupied by a marina. So, I know that the design for marina is different from that of a water sports facility. And if in the end the administration accepts our suggestion, then the brief will have to be changed. Are you allowed to make such changes? The tender is about the reclamation work. And the infrastructure and its land use on the reclaimed land will be for the next stage when we have decided on the design. Next time we will come back to you to get funding support for infrastructure and roads and other facilities. So we can still fine-tune it. All the tender documents have been received. Very often we encounter changes when it comes to large-scale civil engineering projects. We may make changes to the terms, and that is part of our routine work. I see from your design that for a marina, they will need some kind of protective facilities for the yachts. Will it have an impact on the reclamation? Say, for example, the seawall. Now you talk about in-depth mixing with cement. I also see that there is an extension of the marina. So I want you to give me a clear answer. Can things be changed? I don't want you to come back to us to say that, well, we can't change anything. So can you change it? Yes, technically we can. We're talking about 130 hectares. We hope that by 2020 we will be able to complete the first reclamation, because there will be first population intake in 2023. So we do have the room to do it. Mr. Holden Chow, thank you. I have 3 questions. First, I'd like to hear from the administration. According to what they've said, the first population intake at the earliest was 2023. But my understanding from the MTRCL was that for Tung Chung East Station, the earliest it will be commissioned in 2026. And I have expressed this on different occasions. So there will be population intake in 2023 without any transportation network, no railway service, and they will have to wait till 2026. People will be unhappy because of the great inconvenience. I hope the administration will urge the MTRCL to speed up their project. If people start moving in 2023, there should be a train station. You should not ask residents to wait for 3 years, because that will be a cause for grievance. I would like to say that with the completion of the 3rd runway, there will be 140,000 jobs. We've always said that we hope that people living in Tung Chung can work in the same district. For people to travel from Tung Chung to the airport island, if you take the bus, it will be a merry-go. It will be a convoluted route, and I don't think that it would be good for people to rely on buses only. There should be mass transportation, say for example light rail system, to link Tung Chung with the airport island. And I know that the MTRCL is conducting a study to extend the Tung Chung line to the airport island. A large section of the Airport Express and the Tung Chung line share the same railway tracks. So can the MTRCL finish the study and tell us whether the railway line can be extended to Tung Chung? Because taking the train is a lot easier than taking the bus. North Lantau Hospital. It is not a hospital with all the disciplines. That is, there are certain disciplines, specialists that are not there. Say, for example, renal. I think first of all, the North District Hospital should be an integrated hospital, and then it will be upgraded to provide sufficient number of beds to meet the needs of residents in Tung Chung. Thank you. Thank you for the question. First of all, is the first population intake in 2023 and the Tung Chung East Station. From what we know, will be completed in 2026. We are aware of the time gap, as we have said earlier. When the THB talked to the MTRCL, they will ask them whether this time gap can be narrowed. Well, people working in the same district as they live, it's an idea we have in our planning. Well, we're all thinking about the same line, and the MTRCL has started discussions whether the spare capacity of the Airport Express can be used. If we have further information, then we will let you know. In relation to the North District and North Lantau Hospital, it is only at the first stage. It is not general hospital. We are aware that there will be 260,000 people in Tongchong, so there may be a need for the hospital to become a general hospital. Well, we're considering various specialties to go there, say for example ob-gyn, pediatric and also urology. For this, there are plans for the second phase. Mr. Chow, you're district councillor of Islands. The hospital authority went to consult them in September. With an increasing in population in Tongchong, the 180 beds will not be able to meet demand. So in the long run, there needs to be a second phase. When it comes to the project cost, well, when it comes to consolidation of when it comes to strengthening the foundation and the deep cement mixing, well, I would like to know the strengthening of the foundation as well as the deep cement mixing. And also the non-dredging method. Well, compared to the reclamation method of the artificial island and of the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge using the non-dredging method, and that will be the same, is that right? And we have heard about displacement of seabed and thereby pushing up the project cost. So now when it comes to strengthening the foundation, what is it about? I would like to know. Can I defer to the director? Reclamation at Tung Chung East, where we now adopt the deep cement mixing method. This is the first. Well, actually, this is not the first. The first is in the third runway. The member mentioned about the artificial island. It has used the non-dredged method. So it's the same way. But when it comes to strengthening the seabed, the methods adopted are different. We now propose deep cement mixing. For Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge, gravels and debris was used. So it is different from our proposed method. When we conduct the study on reclamation, we decide that this method is preferred given the geology, the ground condition, and other information. When it comes to the project cost, we have taken into account the project cost of the third runway as well as the latest market situation. Thank you. I would like to follow up. Well, the difference is the seabed. You will use the deep cement mixing method to stabilize the seabed. So you think that you can in a way ensure that there will not be a displacement of the seabed like what we have heard about the from the artificial island. When we conduct studies, the most important thing is to learn about the ground condition and the site condition of the construction site, the geological condition, surrounding areas and what options we have. When we conducted the study, we found that if we use debris piles, it will not be favorable because the marine mud is rather weak. It seems that the safety coefficient would be low. If we use the deep cement mixing method, because we want to afford additional safety, we have asked overseas experts to review it. They will look into whether the method we proposed is suitable. Overseas experts are of the view that this method is suitable to, well, in our case. Most important thing is for us to ensure that all the contract requirements are met, and we will also supervise the work of the contractor. Next, Mr. Wu Chi-wai, 4 minutes. I have a technical question to ask. The seabed foundation will account for $3 billion. Previously, I've asked about the stabilizing of the foundation or the seabed. I don't have the unit cost at the moment. Well, apart from using the deep cement mixing method on the seabed, for other areas of the foundation, does it mean that they will have to put the seawall there, just like and then to fill it up, just like when they will first build the seawall and then fill the gap in between to stabilize it? Can you explain to me the different methods? Mr. Wu's observation is right. Just now I said that under the seawall we have to strengthen the foundation. That's why we adopt the deep cement mixing method. In other areas, we will fill up the different sections, and then we will put in place devices, and we will put fill materials in there. Well, we will add surcharge to the fill material to speed up water drainage. When it comes to subsidence, it's related to the water content of the soil. So there will be reinforcement of the seawall. So you just use the conventional reclamation method by using fill material. Well, what about controlling the seabed? What method will you use? How do you control the pollutants in the seabed? For non-dredged method, well, actually, sludge. Yeah. Is the most thorny issue. That's why we will leave it there. Then we will use pipes to drain water out of the sludge. So can I say it this way? The sludge in the sea bed, you will make use of the fill material on top to keep it in place. How can you ensure that when you add fill material, the sludge will not discharge pollutant into the sea? Well, we will put sand in and then dirt. We need to put sand there because sand is quite even.
We all know that sand has a more even surface. For other types of reclamation, it could be as large as 8 inches. So sand can provide evenly spread out, support for the materials on top, so they will not, move around. So we are relying on the sand. And the speed of reclamation and the method we use should be tightly controlled so that the sludge will not move around. Are you going to have reliable supply of sand? Because there will be a lot of demand for sand for the third runway project as well. We have not specified the source of the sand. The contractor is responsible for procuring the sand. 2 more other members have indicated that they would like to speak. I'd like to appeal to other members in the building who would like to submit 37A amendments. Please do so ASAP. Mr. Chanang Ban, thank you. For the non-dredging method proposed for the reclamation, the issue of sand and sludge are very important because you need to discharge the water. If you cannot discharge the water out of the sludge, it will not subside, and that might result in the dislocation of the island. So I think for this type of technology, it's not very commonly used. And for this reclamation project, we are going to use this technology. I hope that the department will do more research into this to ensure that there will be strict supervision so that after the reclamation, if the settling is irregular, it will result in, problems. So I hope the department and the bureau will pay particular attention to this, to the use of this type of technology. I don't have too much confidence in this technology, but with the advancement of technology, I'm sure we can we can manage. But I think you should also monitor the contractors closely. Of course, if you excavate the sludge, it will give rise to other environmental issues. So after the project's approved, I hope you will, do a lot more, make more efforts to follow up. I think we note the concerns of members. After we have finished with our design and the project has commenced. Other than deploying sufficient staff to monitor the work of the contractors on site, we will also engage independent and well-renowned geotechnical experts to help us monitor the progress of this project and to collect information to help us assess the situation. We certainly do that. Mr. A. Chan, 4 minutes. Thank you. Earlier, in answering Ms. Lausilai's question, the authorities gave us a table regarding the a scoring table for public work projects. That is, the bidder may get a score for 0 to 20 marks for previous, experience. Do we have any contractor who have any experience in the DCM technology? I think you would only acquire the experience after a project has been completed. So if a company is now working on the reclamation for the third runway, then of course you can take that into account. In the last few years, mainland Chinese capital companies have not adopted the DCM method, they use other methods in reclamation, and the mistakes which have occurred, would that adversely affect the scores they may get if they bid for this project? And for contractors, I think because this project may cost, may be up to 10 billion. Some contractors have made mistakes, and they still, nevertheless, lodge claims against the government. It's been reported the recommendation project for the Hong Kong-Macau Bridge, the contractor refused to pay for the additional costs to, to tidy up to rectify the problems caused by the dislocation of the artificial island. So for such adverse performance, will it affect their scores? And also, will you be, amending the scoring system so that for contractors who had made unreasonable, claims and so on, you should, take that into account. There have been many recent large-scale reclamation projects during which there have been many accidents. I'm talking about the Hong Kong-Macau Bridge. So 5 to 10 marks may be a bit low. Would you consider reviewing that? When we assess the bids, we would follow a series of criteria to judge the performance of the contractor. The track record of the bidder will make up 18 to 30 points for every contract. Depending on the characteristics of the contract, we will, decide on the score to reflect our requirements of the contractor. The track record of the contractor covers a broad area. It would include its technical performance. We will also look at its safety performance, and also its management expertise and how well they've managed the subcontractors. All these will be considered. There's one point in particular, and that is claims. How did this contractor, what has been his track record? We will also take that in consideration. As I said, this is the first public works project using the DCM method. So when we call for tender, we require the contractors to have such prior experience for the third runway or experience in overseas projects. We will also take that into consideration when we assess the bids. As far as safety is concerned, we would also look at the track record of the 10 bidders in the area of safety. If they have any problems in terms of safety, if they had 2 adverse reports in a quarter, we would have already suspended the contractor from tendering for our projects. So in this respect, we think that we will be very stringent about safety in selecting the contractors. Well, I said that you need to have. Are you saying that the contractor must have completed the previous contract with similar technology before, or what? If they are now working on projects using the DCM method, if they have, and before they win the bid, if they completed such projects, they will be taken into consideration. Eddie, 4 minutes. Thank you. Earlier, when we said that we wanted the THB and the Food and Health Bureau should be represented here, because reclamation is should not just involve the Development Bureau. But if we cannot discuss the other issues, how can we approve this reclamation project. But today we still don't have anyone from those bureaus to answer questions relating to the hospitals, from the FEHD, and the TXP is not here to answer questions related to transport. Chairman, you all know that after the rules of the FC is amended, we won't even have the opportunity to discuss these capital works projects at the FC in future. So I hope you will note this and ensure that officials from more departments are present when we discuss this project. For the Tung Chung project, originally I wanted to give my conditional support, but there is still one question which the government has not actively responded. That is, if we're going to spend $20 billion for the reclamation project, we're going to form some land. According to the figures from the government in May, 50% of the land form will be used to build public housing. The other 48% will be for public housing and 52% for private housing. So in other words, the land that is reclaimed, public housing will use less than half of that. And of the public housing units to be built, it also includes HOS units. So for the 40,500 units, only 10,000 odd units will be public housing if you work on the basis of 60%. And you're going to use so much resources to build this large land mass, and if it is used to build housing which the public cannot afford to buy. And you also look at Tung Chung West, where the development will mainly be private housing. For Tung Chung East, so 60%, 70% will be rent PRH units, 30-40% will be public housing units for green form applicants or HOS, I don't care. Now, I think only with such a sort of balance would be right. But the government has not really, responded to this suggestion. I'm worried that for the 15,000 PRH units, under the new administration, I don't know how many of those units will be, made available for sale. So the PRH units will only be around 10,000. Mr. Chen Fan, the secretary, have said that for the next 10 years, there will be a shortfall of 40,000 PRH units. Why don't you then actively try to address this issue in Tung Chung, instead of, quoting the long-term housing strategy, which is already outdated? So do you have any new ideas to tie in with what I, suggested earlier? Because that would be, a direction that can better cater to the needs of the people. Thank you. Tung Chung West, there will be 8,000 odd units. It's not like Mr. Chi said that they will all be entirely private residential units. We still maintain the 60-40 split. Of the 8,000 units, 60% will be public housing, including PRH and HOS. The remaining 40% will be private housing. Where I think we understand members' concern and views on this issue. Let's look at the figures. For Tung Chung East, we're not refusing to, we are being inflexible. The long-term housing strategy said 60-40, and we will stick, blindly to it. But it's actually 63 and 37. This will reflect our policy considerations at the time. So we will now proceed with reclamation. When we're going to build, it will still be a few more years before we'll build the units. Should there be any policy change during the interim, we will not rule out the possibility that the 63-37% split will be further adjusted so that more PRH units can be built. KK Kwok. Chairman, I think the Deputy Secretary understands why we are so concerned about that ratio between public and private housing. Very often, the government, after we've approved the funding for a project, the government would say, we already told you 63-37, and then you've already given us your approval, and we're not going to change that. anymore. The situation now is the government has now fine-tuned the long-term housing strategy, and I don't want to comment too much on that, but actually I think we're going to face great difficulties regarding the supply of PRH units. You're saying that the ratio is not rigid. Of course, I don't want you to adjust downward the proportion of public housing. Can you confirm that you will only increase the number of PRH units? We've demanded that it should be at least 70%. Secondly, a question for the director. Two questions, rather. You said that the contractors working on the third runway, now, but the third runway project will not be completed by the time you award the contract for this one. So if you have a contractor who has a very poor track record and performed badly for the third runway project, there's been lots of accidents and cost overruns, but you may still award the contract to that contractor, and this is very risky. And secondly, could you confirm that for the Hong Kong-Macau Dry Bridge, including the artificial island, we already have an incident? There have been many fatalities, and the artificial island has been, dislocated. And this involved at least two Chinese mainland enterprises, China Construction, and so I'd like to ask this. For these two mainland enterprises which have won these mega projects, they have had so many accidents and so many instances of cost overruns, and the artificial island, the bill is shifting. So does it mean that they can still continue to win this project, which is costing $20 billion? Director, let me answer the question relating to Dr. Kwok's two questions. For the third runway project, in our assessment, we will do the scoring according to a set of criteria. Track record is one factor. Dr. Kwok said that if the third runway project is not finished yet, what happened to the current contractor working on the third runway project has not done well and has come up with cost overrun. By track record, we're talking about projects the contractor has completed. And it's not just the third runway. There could be many other projects. So we would look at it globally. As for Mr. Kwok mentioned the Hong Kong China Macau Bridge, where some contractors have not done a good job. That is a capital works project, and every 3 months, the Highways Department would prepare a quarterly performance report regarding these contractors. So based on these quarterly reports, and also taking into consideration the track record, we will use those as the basis of our evaluation. If they did not perform well, if the quarterly report has been very poor, then the score awarded to this contractor would be lower, and the possibility of the being awarded the Tung Chung East project would be smaller. I'd like you to confirm for those two contractors who have done so poorly. You talk about the quarterly scores. Have they failed? We are now assessing the bids at the moment, so I don't think we can make any disclosure at this point. Mr. Oh Chong Shing. Well, Chairman, regarding this project, I have several questions for the administration. You would have noticed that this project will accommodate quite a sizable population with about 50,000 housing units. We want to ensure that there won't be any mistakes. So regarding the 25,700 subsidized housing units, I hope that this will be the minimum. After we've given you the approval, I don't think you should be allowed to adjust that number, because you are now having a very long waiting list for public housing. Does the government have the resolve the determination to resolve this question? So our demand is very clear here. Secondly, close to 150,000 people will move into the new development area. We always emphasize that you should plan first before you have population intake. The government has not given us any undertaking that in future you will do the planning first. Transport and welfare facilities are also necessary for this development. So I'd like to listen more as to what are your plans for transport and other facilities for this project.
And thirdly, you said in the paper that you've consulted various stakeholders, including the district council in Tongchong. You said they supported it, but I'm sure they must have raised some concerns. So could you tell us here, in the past, the district council on the new development area, what are their concerns or worries, and how have you tried to ease their worries? DS? Thank you, Chairman. A member, for your question. On the 40,000 odd units in Tongchong East, the ratio between private and public housing, our plan is that for public housing it will be 25,700, and private units, they will number 15,100. As for whether we can increase the number of public units, because you are concerned about the waiting time for public housing, we heard your view, and we hope that when we do the planning, later on we'll see whether we can accommodate your concern. As for the support measures for development of the new town, like transportation, we hope that new town, the planning of it should be rail-led. Therefore, we'll have a Tongchong East station, and there will be a Tongchong West station too. But as mentioned by some members, it won't be in 2026 when the Tongchong East station is built. But most people will move in 2023, so there will be a time lag. So the government and the MTRC would negotiate to try to shorten the time lag. And also, you mentioned about the need for social welfare facilities. In Tongchong, we feel that with the reclamation, we will be able to try to, say, in the town center of Tongchong, provide more welfare facilities for the people living there, because Tongchong East, the 120 hectares of land, give us space, additional space for us to create more welfare facilities. I can't remember whether it's the development panel or PWSC. I think it's Fernando Zheng who mentioned or asked about the increase of welfare facilities there. Based on our planning standards, we have actually added homes for the elderly and facilities for the disabled there. And the planning department had also discussed with the social welfare department to see beyond what's prescribed by the standards, whether there's any room for the creation of more facilities. So we will strengthen services for the elderly, including places in nursing homes and daycare centers, and also will increase facilities for the disabled. And also, in our plan for the Tongchong area, in 2012-14, we consulted various stakeholders, including the district council. I believe that they did support the plan, but at the same time, they expressed concerns for certain areas, as she just said, like such as the transportation link and public facilities. Claudia Mo, 5 minutes. On this item, my impression all along has been it's like half-half. That is half of the areas zoned for private housing and the other half for public housing. But when you look at the actual data, it seems like public housing number less than private housing. No, that's not right. Please clarify. Please clarify. Yes. Yes, in Tung Chung East, there will be 40,000 units, residential units. Among them, 25,700 will be public units, including public rental housing and HOS flats. There is also 15,100 private flats. It's a ratio of 63 to 37, 63 being the public housing. But how about HOS among the public housing? Because HOS is not for those who are now queuing up, right? For public rental housing. But you lump them together. Well, maybe I can give you more details. Of the 25,100 public units, 70% will be PRH units. That is about 17,000. And there will be 7,000 odd HOS flats. I understand that some members may think that we should increase the provision of public rental housing units. We know that, we heard your view, but in the latest rounds of lottery for HOS flats, quite shows that quite a number of people in Hong Kong do want to buy HOS flats. So we need to strike a balance between PRH and HOS flats. It's not that I'm opposed to HOS. People want to buy flats, nothing wrong with that. But I just want you to be very clear. No, Carrie Lam just announced in her policy address, which is actually advocating plans to let people buy their first flats. So for the number of flats decided in your plan, would you say that in the light of the policy address, despite the policy address, the ratio of 6:4 between private and public rental housing would not be affected, right? Yes. The starters home plan announced by the CE, which covered 1,000 units. You can see that, as she announced, this scheme, provision of 1,000 units, will not affect the provision of public rental housing, because the site for that starter home scheme will not be used for PRH. I know it will be a public-private partnership for that particular site. So that will have no impact on the Tung Chung plan, right? Is that right? Would you promise or assure us 100%? Yes, the starters home scheme is only meant for a pilot scheme at the Edison Road site. Okay, just then I heard you saying about the vetting of contracts. If someone did lodge claims, then you would reconsider it. Say I'm a contractor. If something happened and I feel that I'm qualified to lodge claims with the government, that means I lodge claims after I've been victimized. And my act of lodging claims, would that give me the merits in my tenders? Can you give us more details? Is it that, how would you assess the bids? Director, when I mention the claims, I'm talking about the attitude. That is, if the attitude of seeking claims is not good, how did you decide or qualify bad attitude? Well, lodging claims is part of a contract, so contractor is entitled to lodge claims based on the contract. But for some contractors, they tend to abuse their entitlement to lodge claims. So we know, when we do engineering projects, we can judge whether someone has abused his right or not. The vast majority of contractors, we feel that their attitude is fine. no problem. But there are individual contractors who, to us, tend to go too far. So for such contractors, we will, because of the attitude in lodging claims, would put on their submission of application that they're not up to a standard. Okay, now we're going to have 25 minutes left for this meeting. If you want to vote on this item, please watch the time. Okay, next one, Kwakaki. The non-dredging method for reclamation is relatively new. Can you tell us, can you confirm with me that, as I just mentioned, is the two construction companies who were involved in building the artificial island and the Hong Kong Macau Zhuhai Bridge that is more experienced in the non-dredging period, that is China Construction and the other company? I wouldn't comment on individual construction companies, but for non-dredging method, the Hong Kong Macau Zhuhai Bridge used the method, artificial island used the method, same for the third runway. Okay, that's fine. Well, the third runway hasn't been built, so I can't really say much about that. But for the Hong Kong Macau Zhuhai Bridge, it's full of accidents. It is notorious for its over budgets, and there's also claims that some of the structures are floating or deviated from their predestined location. So how can you have quarterly monitoring of the contractor's performance? Okay, when they submitted the tender, nothing happened, but maybe 2 quarters earlier, their projects had run into problems. So how would you assess? That is for the Hong Kong Macau Zhuhai Bridge and the artificial island. Hong Kong people were worried about the industrial safety and the reliability of the construction projects and also the budget overruns. How can you help us feel assured if it's the same two companies that submit the bids later on? And up to 39% of the you know that you have this plan for $10.4 billion for the contingency, but why is it that the government goes for such tendering method? Are you encouraging us to submit a low bid and then you would squeeze them further? Is it the reason for cost overruns in other projects? As for the performance of contractors, we would look at their performance over the past few years, not just 1 quarter alone. So you can see from their past performance how they performed in the past. So how would you assess the 2 main contractors? Well, I'm not going to comment on individual contractors. Well, it's only the 2 contractors that were involved in the projects I mentioned. Let's not just name them. What is your assessment of the contractor for the Hong Kong Macau Zhuhai Bridge? For the assessment of individual contractor is reflected in their quarterly report. So can you give us a copy of your quarterly assessment report? Well, it's confidential paper. I need to discuss with my colleagues first and with them first. As for the contingency fee, in 15J of the paper, there is a contingency fee which is about 9% of our cost estimate of the project. You need to have provision for price adjustment as well. Okay, let me make some talk a bit about the provision for price adjustment. It is indeed intended to, during the course of the construction, to accommodate adjustments in price during the construction period. That is in case the contractor has to pay for the shoulder for the adjustment in price. So it's nothing to do with contingency fee. Next one, Fernando Zhang. Just NDS mentioned that I was concerned about the welfare facilities in the town and land use earmarked for welfare facilities. In Hong Kong, the ratio of old people living in care homes is about 6%. Now with the Tung Chung East region, there will be 118,900 people living there. If you assume that 20% of them will be elderly people, that means 23,700 people living there will be elderly. Using the 6% ratio, that means we will need 1,426 residential places. In the administration's response to Eddie Chu's question, it shows that there will be 2 residential homes providing 300 places for the elderly. But we need 10 such residential care homes in the area to meet the needs of all the elderly there. So the Tung Chung East development will double the amount of the population in Tung Chung currently, which is now a little bit more than 100,000. So we're going to have an additional 120,000 there. It's a big population increase. So I'm really worried. Just then Ms. Ho said that they are discussing with Social Welfare Department or the Planning Department to see whether they can find more spaces for welfare facilities, including those for the elderly and disabled. I'm very pleased to hear that. But can you give us more information? Because looking at any one kind of facility, I can see that your provision is way short of what is needed. Who would answer? Well, thank you, Chairman and Mr. Zhang, for your question. Just then you said that in our current planning, we have made provision for 2 residential care homes for elderly, each with 150 places. That's the original plan. Indeed, after listening to members, we agreed that we need to increase the provision. So we will provide more daycare center places and also residential care homes for the elderly. As for the actual number of beds or places at the centers and so forth, we're still discussing with the Social Welfare Department. Maybe later on, once we've got the concrete figures, we will provide them to Mr. Zhang. But just then you mentioned there is 6% of elderly people who live in residential care homes. I think that's on the high side. We do hope to help more elderly people age in place at their own home instead of relying on residential care homes. So this is something that's still very developing, because the Welfare Department Bureau is working on helping more people age in place. So we'll look at how many more places we need to provide for in Tung Chung East, and we'll provide you with the latest information in writing. I agree, we won't want to see all elderly people moving to the care homes. It's best for them to live at home. But for them to be able to live at home, you need to provide daycare center services, or you need to provide household services, places where they can cook or get support from others. So I'd like to know about what sorts of projects you have in mind, and you can give us the number of places later on. Please let us know ASAP what sort of new projects you will offer. Okay, you're going to provide the information in a new paper, supplementary paper. Okay, any more questions? If not, then I will. Any other members with questions? Now it's Chu Hoi Tik's turn. Okay, if I have used up my time, well, I have one question. Just then the DS mentioned that they may take the matter back to the Town Planning Board. I don't know whether you meant that for the marina in the sea waterfront, because you may need to change the land use there, then you would change the layout plan for Tung Chung East. Is that going to happen? Thank you, Chairman and Mr. Chu. Your question. Tung Chung East and Tung Chung West, the outline zoning plan already back in February this year. The CE Council already approved it.
Just now, I mentioned about it may involve rezoning. It's just like the marina mentioned by members. If after we have conducted the study and we think that there needs to be a change, well, currently, if the zoning says it is other use marina, then if I want to change the land use, then I have to go through the town planning process. Section 16 application. Shouldn't it be Section 12? Perhaps I will hear from the planning department. If we think after we have studied it that there is a need to change the land use, we will make an application to change the OZP. There is actually flexibility built in. The current OZB allows us to use planning application to change the land use. I want to actually know whether there is flexibility. Say, for example, apart from marina, what about the ratio between public and private housing? You said there is room for adjustment. So is it the case that you would make planning application on a number of items? If that is the case, then we need to know about the timetable so that we can have further discussion with you. Ratio between public and private housing. Even if there are changes, in the majority of cases, it doesn't involve changing the OZP. Can we hear from Donna? Is it really the case? I'll give you 2 more minutes. Who is to explain this? What the DS said is right. The OZP is a general land zoning plan. When it comes to residential, we will say residential. So whether it is private or public housing, as long as it is residential, it is always permitted. Well, if there are changes, say for example from private to public or vice versa, there is no need for planning application for the change. I expect that we will have an opportunity. After you have heard views from us, make use of the opportunity to fine-tune it. I have mentioned a point, that is the design of the MTR station should involve the public, and the connection between Tung Chung East and the airport. You said you're waiting a report. I think you need to give us the information as soon as you get it, and then let the public know so that you can hear from the public and then revise it. We may endorse this proposal, but at least the public would need another opportunity to fine-tune it to better meet our needs. Yes, there will be another opportunity to talk to you. Say, for example, Tung Chung East Station and Tung Chung West Station, the design and the arrangements. When we have reached the final stage of discussion with the MTRCL, we will go to district councils and LegCo and conduct consultations with them and with the public. The Tung Chung East project is not finished. We will come back again. That will be infrastructure in Tung Chung East and also a site formation in Tung Chung West. That will be another opportunity for us to discuss with members about items close to your heart in Tung Chung. Dr. Fernando Zhang, 3 minutes. This will be the last round, and anyway, it's only the third round. I will state my stance again. I will support, of course, this development. I hope that there will be more land developed for public rental housing. I, in general, have reservations towards reclamation to create land. I hope that you will reduce the extent of reclamation. If we ditch the marina, would you reduce the extent of reclamation? I think so. I think the percentage of public rental housing should be increased. We're talking about 63% of public housing or subsidized housing, out of which only 60% of them are rental housing. So in the end, rental housing is less than 40% of the overall number of units. In June, in your answer in reply to Mr. Ju's question, you said that out of the public housing in Tung Chung New Town, rental housing to public housing for sale is 75% to 25%. And that is the whole of Tung Chung. When it comes to this Tung Chung East reclamation is 60% to 40% in terms of rental to those for sale. I am disappointed. Sorry, Dr. Zhang, let me interrupt you. I want to first clarify. 75 to 25. This ratio is Tung Chung Town Center, that is Yat Tung, Fu Tung Estates. 75 to 25. That is the Tung Chung Town Center. The Tung Chung East Reclamation Project. I said 25,000 of them are subsidized housing, 70% of them, not 60, 70% of them are PRH housing and 30% of them will be HOS flats. You sure 70%? Because in your reply there's 60 to 70%, there is a range. Well, Carrie Lam said that property ownership will be the main tune, and she would change rental housing to public housing for sale. So I am concerned. If the DS makes it clear that it's going to be 70% instead of 60, I think it's a slight improvement. This will be newly created land using a lot of public money. I hope that it will be for more grassroots. 70% is about 40% of the overall number of flats for rental housing. This is the last round. Give me more time. When it comes to social welfare facilities, I am glad to hear that there will be some more adjustments. The adjustments may affect the Hong Kong PSG. The Hong Kong PSG is very outdated when it comes to welfare facilities. There are lots of loopholes and the standards are really low. The requirements are really low. And if you listen to the public, it can become the standard for social welfare facilities. We still have 5 minutes. I will add 15 minutes to it, so we only have 20 minutes to vote on this. There are 237A anymore. We will now deal with the 37A. I've received from Mr. Ray Chen under 37A some motions. Let's ring the bell for 5 minutes. Please read it out. Under 37A of the Finance Committee rules, I move that given the Tung Chung East reclamation and advanced work, some of the facilities will be used for marina. However, only a handful of high salary people can own yachts. So mooring places for yachts does not involve public interest. So I ask the site for proposed marina should be put to other uses so that we can ensure public money is properly used.
我諗如果啲官員等緊，可以唔使等噶啦，我哋做完呢個項目。
Well, perhaps government officials do not have to wait anymore because after we have dealt with this item, we will adjourn.
We're
about to vote on whether to deal with 37A. There are two 37A motions. Voting begins. Voting closes. Result displayed. 7 for, 24 against, no abstention. I declare that this motion is not to be dealt with. The second one, please. Under Finance Committee Procedure 37A, I move that given the reclamation and advance work of Tung Chung New Town Extension, and the reclamation area will be very close to the NEF 25 estimated at 2030. It's only a distance of 500 meters. Well, say for example, after 2023, that the noise pollution from the airport is worse, then residents will be affected. So I ask that the reclamation be changed so that it will not affect residents in the future.
他黨又走晒好嘢。我提一提大家一陣間，我哋表決嗰。
Let me remind you that we're still voting on 37A. After that, we will deal with the proper voting on the funding approval.
現在請大家表決。
Please vote now. The poll is now closed. We'll display the results. 32 in favor, 28 against, so the motion is not carried. So if there are no further questions, we will now put 2017-18 15A to the vote. All those in favor? We'll ring the division bell for 5 minutes.
提一提各位呢，我哋
To remind members that we will be taking the vote soon. Before members cast a vote, I'd like to thank members for your cooperation so that our proceeding would be able to proceed so smoothly. If this continues, I'm sure my state of health would also improve. Please vote now. The poll is now closed, and we will display the results. 27 in favor, 2 against, and 2 abstention. I declare that the motion is carried. Thank you very much.